I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do none of that today. We're gonna be talking about some Hathor. Who be the gods of Exodus 32? The golden calf. I'm pretty sure it's Hathor. So Hathor is the golden one, and she is a calf goddess, or a cow goddess, or a woman wearing a cow headdress with the sun on it. It's kind of all over the place. I'm pretty sure she is the one that the Israelites were worshiping during their worship, and this video is going to be my evidence for that position. So, starting off, she is described as the golden one. So having a golden goddess and having a cow god, gold cow. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty like a Kobe. Anyway, but beyond that, we still have a lot of other things that show, okay, this is like very plainly obvious that it's Hathor. Now, there are some speculations that it's like Ibis or like the other cow deities you can have. There's a bunch of them. But I think for sure, or at least like 90% like certainty, it's probably Hathor. And it's probably the early date of the Exodus. So this is my evidence for, I guess, both of those, but primarily the golden calf being the cow. Golden cow. So Hathor is an interesting one. She is the personification of the Eye of Ra as both Sekhmet, which is this lioness crazy chick who is always like drenched in blood. She's like a lion head drenched in blood from slaughtering Pharaoh's enemies. And then she's also a cow. And we're going to talk about how those two things happened. And she's also sometimes a cobra. It's all over the place. But she is the Eye of Ra that became a cow goddess woman type person. And she is also the wife of Ra and the daughter of Ra and the mother of Ra, because Ra goes through rebirth cycles. So the eye or the womb of Hathor is also where Ra rebirths from. So like the sun emerges from it. Anyway, common in mythology, but especially in Egyptian mythology. There's a lot of, so that, ignore the for a moment. Hathor is this weird deity that does all these things. She's also linked to Ma'at, or the cosmic order of the universe. If you've seen their little symbols that they have, like Osiris, those are the symbols of the cosmic order. The pharaoh has that whenever he's being pictured, because that is what Pharaoh's primary duty is he is the one who controls the cosmic order to keep it going forever and ever and ever. If Pharaoh ceases to exist, the whole universe will cease to exist. That's kind of the idea. So she is related to that, which is why she has the sun in her headdress. But she also is the goddess of dancing and music and drinking and love and fertility. And one of her titles that she gets from association with another cow goddess is the Lady of the Vulva. So she is literally the goddess of, do with that what you will, but she's one of the primary fertility deities within Egypt. Egypt has dozens of fertility deities. Heket, one of them, the sexy frog lady. But Hathor is the sexy cow lady, where she is also very, she is seen to have been nursing the pharaoh. She's seen as the embodiment of the female rulers, so the queens, princesses, also the female pharaohs, because there's a couple of them, which we'll get to in this video. But she's seen as this, essentially this embodiment of sexuality, this embodiment of celebration and joy, and essentially hedonism. She's like the Egyptian equivalent of Venus or Aphrodite. And she is also sometimes linked to like Atum. Atem, like that is one of the primordial gods, and he is the one that helped create the universe. And one of the mythologies, like there's other sections like, Neith created it by weaving it together. There's a lot of creation myths within Egypt because they changed their religion every couple of centuries. So this specific version of it is basically Atum started gooning, and during that process, his hand became feminine, and it's the hand of Atum that later is personified as Hathor. So she like helped get him off, and then his seed created Shu and Tefnut, where Shu is like the wind and Tefnut is like the primordial waters type. Shu and Tefnut come together and they create Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. So a lot of, so you have to then create the other gods, and then within those gods, Ra's then doing with Hathor, but she is like personified of the hand that gooned. So we have that being part of her backstory. So she's very important. She is a solar deity, and the sun is the primary aspect of Egyptians' religion. And she is also part of the creation story in some accounts, and she is what brings love and childbirth, which is central to Egyptian practice and belief, into the world. And she's related also to the flooding of the Nile, and she's partially related to Meheret. However you pronounce that. And that is the goddess, the cow goddess specifically, and she has the sun headdress on as well, so they look the same in the cow form. She is the goddess of the Great Flood, which is the flooding of the Nile, and also possibly the flooding of the whole world, but that'll be a different video. So she is deeply, deeply important, and she is also linked to the salvation of humanity. She's also kind of linked to the destruction of humanity, which gets into her two big primary forms. Now, she has other forms and other names that are all associated loosely together, including Mutz, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Sekhmet, which is the lioness form, and Hathor, which is the cow form of the Eye of Ra, the goddess that is the protector of Pharaoh's court. So it's depicted as like the executioner of Pharaoh's enemies. Well, there were these humans that started to rebel against Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, "Nuh-uh, fam, get him." So then she turns into a lion or lioness, and then goes and massacres all the rebels, but she tasted human blood and desired it too much, so then she just kept killing. So she massacred multiple areas. She massacred like Nubia. Like, she went out of her way to kill a bunch of people, and it got so bad that he was like, "Oh, she's gonna kill all of humanity. I should probably stop this." So Ra got a bunch of beer, dyed it red, poured it on the land. She thought it was blood. It's like, ooh, blood. So then she started like lapping it up like a cat, because she's literally a cat. And then she passes out drunk and then wakes up as a beautiful, naked, sexy cow. I'm not kidding, that's the actual mythology. So because of that, they do this festival called the Festival of Drunkenness, where they're reenacting the process and celebrating the salvation of the world, and also the flooding of the Nile, because it happens like roughly 20 days after the flooding of the Nile starts. So we have this festival. This is the Tekh Festival. And in the Tekh Festival, the Festival of Drunkenness, what they would do is they would have these priestesses go around dancing naked, or very close to naked, and they would be serving beer to everyone. And everyone would be drinking, including them. So you would have some designated drivers that would be responsible to manage the chaos, but everyone else was drunk. And the point of the festival was to get so drunk that you actually passed out, like Hathor. So you would drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. If you threw up, you had to keep drinking afterwards. We actually have hieroglyphs of them drinking and this whole process, the women dancing naked. You have all of it, and it is pretty explicit, including them throwing up. You have them dancing very erotically. You have them like bending backwards, weighing their hips. Like, it is designed to be sexual, and they're beating drums while they're doing this and playing music and shaking a little instrument. They're going through this whole experience. Everyone's getting drunk. They do it in torchlit rooms, and then they have we know about the because of a few inscriptions, but there is debate within like history of, were they actually doing, was it actually sexual, or was it just erotic? Well, according to a couple inscriptions that we have, which says, "Let them drink and let them have in front of the god," which was on a chalice found within this temple dedicated to Hathor. So we have a chalice that's like, hey, let's drink, let's get drunk, and let's have. And we also have in one of the ancient hymns of Hathor, the Hathor, the Golden One, says, "Come, O Golden One, who eats of praise, because the food of her desire is dancing, who shines on the festival at the time of the lighting of the lamps, who is content with the dancing at night. Come, the procession is in place of inebriation." They would do like this procession in the next morning, where the priest would go and carry her like statue, her idol, her image down the area, and all the like hungover people would like worship it. And that the hall of traveling through the marshes, that phrase, "through the marshes," is a euphemism for then the hymn keeps going, and it praises her in the different places, what they're doing, what they're dressing, the kings, and it's a whole thing. So that shows that they were having intercourse during this festival. They were basically having a giant or a bunch of mini in various locations, because it wasn't necessarily outdoors, although there were outdoor aspects to it. So you could have both indoor and outdoor while drunk. Everyone's passing out and everyone's getting horny because they're watching the naked girls dance. And these girls are literally trained in the art of being hot and dancing. They're basically ancient strippers for the purpose of getting people horny for the festival to honor Hathor, the fertility god. So everyone going home pregnant that night. Anyway, this being interesting, where her being like this cow lion goddess of like the ultimate femme fatale and of the boobly loose woman that just, lays down and spreads. Those two aspects are actually incorporated into the Egyptian mythos of women, that women are both encompassing the two extremes of terrible fury and of love and desire and intimacy. So we have the two extremes within Egyptian thought of women are incredibly violent and also incredibly loving or sensual. So we have that. We have all of that kind of bubbling around in this idea. And during the time of the Exodus, if you take early date of the Exodus in the 1446 BC, there's an interesting parallel with this festival and what was happening within the kingdoms. So this festival was introduced around the 13th dynasty or so, somewhere between like 2000 to 1700 BC. It was introduced in that time frame. And so it's a couple hundred years before the Jews had left. So it may have been like mostly while the Jews were there, because they were there for 400 years. So we have them in that time period. It peaked in popularity from 1550 to the 1400s, and it started to wane and get out of favor by 1000 BC. So from like the 1800s to like the 1200s was like the main sect that would have been actually been practiced. And it culminated right around the middle 1400s. So right around the time that the Exodus for the early date would have been happening, it was at the height of that moment. And we see this with some depictions. There's even this inscription of Hatshepsut, which is one of the rulers. She was the wife of Thutmose II and the daughter of Thutmose I. She's the sister of Thutmose II and the wife. So it was and then she also became the ruler, and because whenever Thutmose II died, his son, his heir, Thutmose III, was only 2. So she became pharaoh. She's the second Egyptian pharaoh that's a female in history that we have recorded. So during this time, she's ruling with him, and she enjoys this festival so much, she creates this thing called the Porch of Drunkenness at the Temple of Mut, so one of the versions of Hathor, who's also the consort to Atum. There's this temple of Mut at Karnak. So she developed this Porch of Drunkenness for either her own use or just for specific use of this festival at the temple in which Hathor was worshipped at Karnak. So at Karnak, up the Nile, so she's worshiping there and she's participating. And this was the height of this festival that people were super, super excited about. And they did annually, right? Or maybe semi-annually, depending on the records. But during this time period, it seems to be annually that they were doing this, right? Whenever the flood started, or the Nile started flooding in mid-June to mid-July or early July. So we have this drink and have till you pass out party that is done to a golden cow that is done at this time period of mid-June to late July, and is done while there's flooding and the cows are related, and there's all this stuff. But whenever we look at other aspects to Hathor, it becomes more obviously tied to the golden calf incident. So she is also described as the god of Sinai, or the goddess of Sinai. She's related to the god of Sinai. She's related to the god of Canaan. So in Canaan, in Sinai, they had these other similar deities, and they basically established their own version of worship to Hathor. So she's described as Our Lady of Turquoise in Sinai, and she's also described as Our Lady of Byblos. And her worship site was Beth Shean. So she is this goddess who's also associating with Canaan and Sinai. So she is involved in the worship in the location that the Jews are going to and where the Jews are currently situated at. So they're in the land where Hathor would have been known. And the Festival of Drunkenness is a festival to celebrate the salvation of humanity, because Hathor was quelled by Ra. Ra saved them. And Ra is associated with Hathor. They're basically husband and wife, also like daughter and mother. We get this salvation-esque festival dedicated right after Yahweh saves the Israelites by crossing them through the great waters, which is also related to Hathor, into this land during this time period. Because also remember, when did the Jews go out of Egypt? It happened during Passover. Then they traveled for a while. We actually have the exact dates that Moses went up the mountain. It is specifically the 8th day of Sivan, which around that time period in 1446 BC would have been around June 10th or so, June 14th. It would have been like mid-June. June. He goes up the mountain after receiving the 10 Commandments mid-June, and he stays up there 40 days, and he comes back down. This would have been right around mid to late July. The Nile flood would have happened around June 2nd that year, and the 20 days after, which is whenever they were doing the Festival of Drunkenness, is right around the same time that he's coming down from the mountain, in which he hears them doing that. So the time actually lines up almost exactly. It would have been within the same week or two that the normal Festival of Drunkenness in Egypt would be happening, and the Jews are doing the golden calf incident. Pretty incredible. Not only that, whenever you read the description in Exodus 32, 17 through 19, we see, when Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of war in the camp." Moses replied, "It is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear." When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. He then powders it and makes them drink it, which if it's the Festival of Drunkenness, they would have been drinking an exorbitant amount, so he forces them to drink it instead of them drinking their beer. And then he also goes out and he tells them to go slay the ones who are participating in this festival, or in this idol worship. Well, how could they know who was participating in the idol worship unless it's the people who are drunk and having sex? So he goes out and he tells them to go kill all the people who are obviously participating in the Festival of Drunkenness. And you get the sound of, so they are screaming. There's loud moans, but it's not the moans of pain. It's not the screaming of victory. It's not shouts for joy. It's the shouts of orgasm. So my man, he has been he went 40 years hearing these festivals, knowing what they were about, and he's like, oh no, I know what's happening. So to wrap all that up, I think it's pretty obvious that Hathor is the golden calf. Not only is she the golden one, she's a cow. Her festival is literally the same type of festival that they're doing. Even if it's not literal orgies, it's at least the dancing, and the dancing is deeply important to that festival. The primary purpose of that festival is to dance erotically and to get drunk. The dancing is one of the main motifs of it. The fact that it's just dancing by itself, that would have shown that it would have been related to the Festival of Drunkenness, if nothing else. Then you also have the time period lining up. You have the flood / the parting of the sea, like the idea of great waters being involved with the cow, all that lines up. And the rulers line up because Thutmose III may have been the pharaoh of the Exodus. So his stepmom, who was pharaoh, really liked this. All of these things are happening during that dynasty, during that era, with this family celebrating it to exuberance, more so than any of the groups around them. And the Exodus happened then? Wow. I think the case is closed, personally. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you always. Goodbye.